It was the morning of April 18th, 1942. About 600 miles of the coast of Japan were two U.S. aircraft carriers, the Hornet and the Enterprise. The Enterprise had some normal aircraft carrier planes on it, single-engine fighters. On the Hornet, this odd thing, there's 16 huge B-25 bombers that were never designed to take off from an aircraft carrier. The wingspan is so big, it's almost as wide as the flight deck. Poised to take off on what would become called the Doolittle raid. I'm sure you've all heard of it. One of the most outlandish, one of the highest risk, most incredible raids in the annals of military history. No one had ever flown a bomber off an aircraft carrier. They were so big and they were so heavy, they were meant for long runways. They had to take all the excess weight out of them, even the guns. And they practiced these short takeoffs. But what they never did until the morning of April 18th, no one actually flew them off the aircraft carrier. Talk about high risk. And to add to it all, fuel's going to be an issue. They're hoping they have enough fuel to make it over Japan, over the Sea of Japan, past the part of China that's controlled by the Japanese. And yet that doesn't happen. There's a storm. There's 50 mile per hour gusts of wind on the morning of April 18th. And then there's Japanese trawlers that spot them and they say, we have to leave at 600 miles away, not 400 miles away. It's a suicide mission. Why did they do this? Roosevelt, after Pearl Harbor, pushes for this. Pearl Harbor it's different for us now, but back then, it's hard to imagine what that was like. What a huge blow to the United States. Thousands killed in the attack on Pearl Harbor. Some 20 naval ships either damaged or destroyed, including 8 battleships. And right after that, what's Japan do? At lightning speed, they start to take over large swaths of the South Pacific, including the Philippines, one of the worst losses in U.S. military history. By March, 3 months after Pearl Harbor, famously, General MacArthur is ordered to leave the Philippines, leaves thousands of troops behind, has to leave the Philippines. Talk about a demoralized, beat-up nation. And people were afraid. Some people expected or thought that could possibly happen was what? What's coming next? The Japanese have an air of invincibility. West Coast. Maybe they're going to invade the West Coast of the United States. Americans were afraid. Rightly so. And here's Roosevelt that pushes for his military leaders to come up with some way to attack Japan itself. If you can, Tokyo, their capital, major city. Wow. And this idea seemed insane. Not just because you risked the 80 lives. There were 80 heroic volunteers who flew this mission, right? But to put in danger losing our aircraft carriers. We only had a few aircraft carriers in the Pacific. And you're going to try and sneak up on this giant navy? Why did he do this? And even if it's successful, it's not going to be a huge tactical victory. How much damage are 16 bombers going to do to the huge Japanese empire? Why did he do it? Why did they risk all of that? Because more than a tactical victory, the American people needed hope. They needed hope. They needed to believe that it was possible to emerge victorious. He needed to rally the people. And so they did this outlandish thing. And surprisingly, 61 of the 80 courageous flyers survived. 61. And most of you probably know that story well. There's been major movies made of it, stories, books. Maybe you don't know this part of it. You've been through something like that, so much sacrifice, so much at stake, so important to the morale of the people of the United States. And you survive, they would gather the survivors to commemorate. And at one point, they were given a gift of 80 beautiful silver wine goblets. Each one had inscribed the name of one of the 80 flyers, the soldiers. And every year when they would gather, they would turn over the goblet of those who had passed away that year. This went on for years. The last one died just before COVID. In fact, very close to the anniversary in April of 2019. Colonel Richard Cole, at 103 years old, finally passed away. And you can look up the goblets on the internet and see the picture of them. I believe they're in the museum, the Air Force Museum. Wow. We're in the farewell address of the gospel of John. This gospel is written by John the Apostle, who is an old man. This is probably written 6 decades after Jesus is gone. Maybe the year 90, maybe 95, maybe as late as the year 100. What do you need another gospel for? Why does John even write the gospel? Christianity had enjoyed an incredible meteoric rise, expanding more and more Christians. At the same time, what's increasing? The persecutions. They're getting so big, they're becoming a threat. Persecutions from without, and at the same time, from within, heresies that made people doubt, challenge the faith. Some 6 decades in, there are incredible challenges to the Christian community. And John writes this powerful gospel. Many things are distinctive about it. It's the farewell address is very distinctive. 5 of the chapters, almost a quarter of the book, are the farewell address of Jesus. It's at the Last Supper. What's Jesus preparing for? His final mission. The stakes are high. Right? The forces against the church seem invincible. And what does he want to do at the Last Supper? And in this farewell address, he needs to inspire his apostles. He needs to give them hope. He needs to give them a vision of what's possible. And at the very end of the farewell discourse, that's what we hear today. Jesus turns to his Father in prayer. This is the prayer of Jesus. Right after this prayer, he's going to go out into the night to the Garden of Gethsemane. And what does he speak about? What's the one word you hear over and over? Glory. Glory. If you saw the pastor's corner this week, the readings this week speak about glory, the church, and the future. Our future, if we choose it. If we choose it. It's not an easy choice in the contemporary world. What is glory? Most basically, if you read the pastor's corner, it's the manifestation of power or might, or speak of God's kingdom, the sovereignty of God, the beauty of God. It's not easy to describe. Some think of Jesus as stretching language here, as he often does, this kind of mystical use of the word glory to speak the life of God and the kingdom of God, and that this you're meant to share in this. Listen, life is not futile. And despite the forces that are arrayed against us, we can be victorious. And even against Wow. The specter of your own death. C.S. Lewis has a profound talk that I've quoted from before, The Weight of Glory. The weight of glory. He speaks about glory meant acceptance by God, acknowledgement. And listen to what he says, and welcome into the heart of things. To participate in the glory of God is to be welcomed into the heart of things. He writes, the door on which what comes with glory is the door on which we've been knocking all of our lives will at last open. This is what Jesus speaks about and then prays right before he goes out to the Garden of Gethsemane. But before that, what does he do? He raises a goblet. With words greater than the words of the Doolittle raiders who raised a goblet every year. This is the cup of my blood, the blood of the new and everlasting covenant. It will be shed for you so that sins may be forgiven and you may share in the glory of my Father.